The next step is, okay, now you need to figure out what types of testing are you going to need to put into place. And you're going to have two major types of testing that are really required if you're going to do the independent review appropriately. You're going to do some transaction testing, but then you're actually going to do analytical reviews as well. And high level, what is the difference? Well, transaction testing, think of that as the deep dive into specific transactions. It's very detailed, sample driven verification that things are working. So that's typically what you think in terms of an audit, where you're actually grabbing the documentation related to specific events or specific transactions and reviewing those specific transactions to make sure that they checked all the boxes, so to speak. An analytical review is really more broad, program level evaluation. You're looking at trends, ratios, and really kind of evaluating whether or not the system's working the way that it's intended to. So really both are important, but they're different angles on the same program, and they answer different questions. So we're going to break down each one of these sections into the transaction testing element and then the analytical review. Now remember, transaction testing, that's determining whether or not the program is operating as designed. It involves pulling samples of maybe alerts or specific SARs or CTRs, or maybe high-risk customer files or wires or whatever the case may be, but you're pulling specific examples. And you're verifying the accuracy, the timeliness, the completeness of all that documentation, and checking whether or not whether or not the team was following policies and procedures and the regulatory requirements. Okay, so things like, were the CTRs filed correctly and on time? That is something that'll be part of your transaction testing. Our high-risk customers, did they follow all of the enhanced customer due diligence requirements for that particular type of customer? And so you'll pull individuals and do that transaction testing. Now, the strengths there, that's evidence-based, and that's why a lot of regulators, they like to see transaction testing. It's identifying specific failures or specific things that are wrong with the documentation, or maybe there's incorrect CTRs that are being filed. And it's, really, but the problem is transaction testing is very labor-intensive. It takes a lot of time to go through and look at individual documents. And the problem is you only get an indication of what's going on in that particular sample. Okay. And it doesn't really speak to why the problems are occurring. Okay. Very valuable, gets you a lot of information, but you can't rely specifically or solely on transaction testing. The analytical review is, think of that as looking at the overall health or performance of the program, or the risk alignment. And really, you're looking at trends and metrics and ratios and how things are being done. It's looking through risk assessments and evaluating, particular business lines or processes, really trying to get more of an overarching perspective on how things are working. It takes a look at, whether or not risks are being, are being incorporated into the program. Is there staffing that's appropriate? Really more of those high level search for systemic issues, category gaps, things along those lines. Whether or not the system is keeping pace with risks. That's not a transactional question. And it's whether or not these risks that are coming at us fast and furious on a weekly, if not daily basis, whether or not the program is evolving to keep up with that, whether or not issues that are being spotted are being resolved appropriately. So think of it as two different zoom levels. And for each one of the areas we're going to discuss, there's importance that you do some level of transaction testing and some level of analytical review.